We are gonna get down and dirty with it. I'm gonna share with you my honest thoughts about the cons of homeschooling. Welcome back to part 2 of my series about the pros and cons of homeschooling. Last week I talked all about my top 6 pros of homeschooling, and today we're gonna talk about the top 6 cons of homeschooling and how I feel like we can spin those things and work those things to make them pros. My name's Erin. I'm a homeschooling mom to 4 kids from pre-K up through 6th grade. Just finishing our 6th grade year, so almost a 7th grader. We have been homeschooling from the very beginning. I wanted to do this because I feel like it's very important for you to know, especially if you're just starting to consider homeschooling. It's important to know the good as well as the bad side about something so that you can make a decision that's going to be best for your family. Obviously, I feel like the pros outweigh the cons, at least for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here sharing my tips and tricks with you here on YouTube. So if you do end up deciding to homeschool, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel so that you can see all of the things that I have learned along our journey that will help you to get your homeschool started strong and to have a peace-filled, joy-filled homeschool journey. If you're considering homeschooling, it is certainly a massive decision, but you also need to know that it doesn't have to be forever. You can choose to homeschool 1 year at a time, or you can jump in and know that this is going to be what you do forever. Let's jump in. My first con for homeschooling is no breaks. Homeschooling your kids, while you have so much family time together, and that is so important and so valuable and so worth it, it can be a negative sometimes as well, because you don't have that time away from your kids. You don't have a break. You are on the job 24 hours a day. And that's not just with homeschooling. I mean, that's just life. That's just parenting. We don't have that downtime unless we specifically are able to schedule time away from our kids so that we can disconnect for a little while and have a little bit of a break, because sometimes it is valuable and important to create a little bit of space so that you can refresh yourself, so your kids can have some time away from mom, which is important for them sometimes too. So there are certainly ways to work around the fact that you're together all of the time, but it definitely takes a little bit more effort on your part in order to be able to do that, because they're not just being sent away on the school bus and gone for the day. You have to find a babysitter or schedule time with your spouse or grandparents or whatever it may be, so that you can have some time away from your kids to really build into yourself and just have a much needed break, because it is not easy being on call 24 hours a day. But I would certainly rather have the struggle of needing a little bit of a break every once in a while versus not having my kids for most of the waking hours of the day every school day. That just, to me, it is not even a comparison. So while it can be a challenge, it is still, in my opinion, very, very worth it. The second con can be a big one too, and that is the amount of time it takes to plan and organize your homeschool. This one, I think, is one of the really intimidating ideas when people are first starting to consider homeschooling, because they really don't know where to start. And it can seem really overwhelming to try to know that you have to figure out the curriculum that you're going to use. You have to figure out the schedule that you're going to follow. You have to figure out all of these things relating to your homeschool, and that can be a little bit intimidating. I do have some videos for you about planning and scheduling your homeschool routine and all of those things. So I will link one up here, as well as I'll put some down in the description below if that's something that you want to look into a little bit more. There are certainly different methods of homeschooling where some of them require more time than others. So that could be an option of some things that you look into as well that can help alleviate some of that. Or you can just glean from people that have done this for a while that can give you advice or give you input to help you make those decisions for your family. It really doesn't have to be this like crazy thing. There are so many curriculum options out there that are really open and go or laid out for you, so you don't have to spend a ton of day-to-day planning or those kind of things, and that can alleviate a lot of that pressure. Especially for new homeschoolers, it can be tremendously beneficial to find something that is really simple and laid out for you until you can kind of get in a groove of homeschooling and figure out how you want to do things and what's going to work best for you. So check out those links below. Okay, the third con of homeschooling is that there can be a lot of stress and pressure. Sometimes that is stress and pressure that we put on ourselves. Sometimes that is put on us by our spouse or by extended family, or sometimes it's by random strangers at the grocery store that seem to think that they know better than you about your kids and question you about your ability to homeschool. You don't have to have a teaching background in order to homeschool successfully. In fact, most of the people that I know that homeschool that are former teachers actually say that it's more of a hindrance than a help when they choose to homeschool, because they have to kind of unlearn all of this stuff that they've been trained to do in a school group, public school setting that doesn't apply when you're at home with your kids. And so don't feel like if you don't have a background in education that you aren't up to the task of homeschooling, because that is certainly not the truth. I don't have a teaching background, and not that I'm perfect at this for sure, but that has not inhibited my children from being successful in their educational process. We oftentimes put so much pressure on ourselves to feel like it is our job to make sure our kids know everything, that we don't miss anything, that there are no gaps in their education, and we start to have these questions about, am I doing enough? Should I be doing more? We look at all of these outside people that are doing all of these things, and we feel like we aren't measuring up. And the reality is, even kids that go to school are gonna have gaps. There's no way that anyone can learn everything. It's just not possible to learn every single thing. A lot of times we don't give our kids enough credit in thinking that they aren't able to learn on their own. In reality, our kids are born as natural learners, and when you homeschool, you're creating this environment where learning is exciting, learning is fun, and they are going to learn so much on their own, not just by what you teach in a specific curriculum. So don't put so much pressure on yourself to perform to a test or to whatever. You get to enjoy a lifestyle of learning when you can take that pressure off yourself and know that I am not merely a teacher of my child, I am also a parent, but I am a facilitator of their education. It's my job to present them with what they need to know and leave it up to God. Because if He has called you to homeschool, if you feel that leading to homeschool, then everything's gonna work out. He's gonna work out all of the details. One way to combat some of that stress and pressure too is to focus on what matters most to you. What is the one thing that is the most important thing to you for your kids to learn? If you can focus on that and kind of like keep those blinders on, right? We don't need to think about all of these other things out in the periphery. We need to stay focused on what's most important, and if you can do that, then it alleviates a lot of the comparison and the pressure that we might feel from outside sources. So that's one little tip for you. The fourth con that I can see for a lot of people is that it can be expensive sometimes. So there are a vast variety of homeschool curriculum options out there. Some of them I mean, it goes from being free. There are a ton of free resources out there, all the way to being thousands of dollars per child. So it really depends on what curriculum you choose. A lot of the really popular homeschool curriculum options where you are choosing a packaged deal where it has, you know, your math book, your social studies book, your science book, your language book, your spelling book, like all of the things for each kid on their own individual level, those can be like $600, $700, $800 per child, which can be very expensive and very intimidating for the budget. But there are so many other options out there that are far less expensive, as well as there are a lot of things that you can do family style instead of having all of these things on individual levels for every child. And when you do things that way, that eliminates a lot of that stress and pressure too, because when you do things group style, you only have to teach it once. You don't have to teach, you know, multiple kids the same subject in a different way. So that can be a huge benefit. And I did a whole series about the curriculum that we're going to be using this coming year in the fall. I'll link those videos down in the playlist if you're interested in just seeing what some curriculum options are out there. I'm trying to think how much I spent. I want to say maybe I spent around $1,000 for all 4 of my kids for the school year, somewhere in that range. So there's definitely, that is like way cheaper than $700 per child for 4 kids, right? There are a lot of different options out there. So it just can take a little bit of time to find the things that are not only going to fit the budget, but be a right fit with the methodology and the style and how you want to do your homeschool. So I've got a whole bunch of videos about choosing curriculum and all of those kind of things. I will link those in the description below. A 5th con of homeschooling doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, but that is that sometimes there can be a lack of support for you as a homeschooler. This really depends on your situation, because maybe someone in your extended family doesn't feel like you're up to the task to homeschool and they let you know it. Or maybe friends are questioning your decision to homeschool. We can hear all of these things from outside influences sometimes, and that can be not fun. I feel like things have changed a lot in the last year and a half with the pandemic that's been going on, and so many more people are homeschooling now that I feel like the veil has kind of been lifted a little bit and people are more aware of the benefits of homeschooling, and maybe that's why you're considering it at this point. But I feel like with so many people having done some more school at home, they have a greater appreciation of what homeschoolers do. And I feel like there is a little bit more respect for homeschoolers now than there was a few years ago. It definitely is beneficial for you if you are able to find a homeschool community around where you live. There are lots of homeschool co-ops that you can be part of, or even if you just know a friend or two that is choosing to homeschool, that you can decide to do a subject together once a week or once a month, or have a nature group where you go on nature walks or hikes together and you learn about the climate and the plants and animals and those kind of things that live in your area. There's so many ways to do things with other people that can encourage you, that can build you up, that can help support you in the process of homeschooling your kids. So while this can be a negative for some people, there are definitely ways to work around that. You just need to seek out other people that are homeschooling and make a community for yourself so that you have that support system. The 6th con that I have about homeschooling is that you do have to work a little harder at finding social time for your kids. And I talked in my last video about socialization being a benefit of homeschooling, so go check that one out if you missed that. But the con side of it is that because your kids are not in a school setting with kids all day long, you do have to make that effort if you want your kids to have social time, to find ways for them to do that, whether that's sports or co-op again, or a nature group, or lessons that they can do somewhere with other kids, or even just like play dates with other families or friends that you know. You just have to make more of an effort on your part to schedule some of those things into your week, or however often that you want to do those things, so that your kids do have some of that social interaction with peers, because that is important. It is important for them to have relationships with other people their age, as well as it is important for them to be able to have relationships with people that are different ages than them. So that can also be a benefit of homeschooling, is being able to do things more in a group setting with kids of different ages. It's important for kids that are younger to learn from the older kids about how they should be behaving, and just kids that are younger love to hang out with older kids and they want to be like them and that kind of thing. And then it's important for the older kids to even be around kids that are younger, so that they can kind of fall into that role model category, that they can learn that nurturing and caring for younger kids and those kind of things. So there's a benefit for kids on both ends of the spectrum to be able to be around kids of all different ages. If you are already a homeschooler, I am really curious what you would add to this list of cons for homeschooling, as well as the list from last week that are the pros of homeschooling. Will you leave a comment below and let me know what you would add to this list? I encourage you to, again, check out some of those videos in the description below. If you are thinking about homeschooling and you kind of like don't know where to start, I've got you covered. Thanks so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up below and share this out with anyone that you know that might be considering homeschooling, or just someone that you think might get an encouraging word from something that I said here today. And subscribe to my channel for more content all about homeschooling.